This is a quick after-action report from a solo playthrough of Downfall, Conquest of the Third Reich, 1942 to 45, with the situation just as we move into turn 3 of 8, summer of 1943. The majority of the fighting has, as you'd expect, taken place on the Eastern Front, with the Soviets pushing on from the early and inevitable capture of Stalingrad. This sort of early phase of the game really does hinge on the extent to which the German faction, the OKH, can withdraw in good condition, taking up defensive positions further west. And I think at this point they're doing reasonably well, actually. It's been a not particularly disorderly withdrawal, but a well-managed one. But the Russians are pushing them and pushing hard. The key battles, I think, are going to be here around the Dnieper River, where the Germans have taken up a strong-looking defensive line behind the river, together with a combination of Romanians and Hungarians. That's fairly well defended, but they are confronted by some recently revitalised Russian Guards units. There's just been a big influx of those as reinforcements. The Russians also have, for the time being, some air superiority, though they're going to lose that before long. But I think this is where the next phase of the battle is really going to focus. The Germans actually faced, prior to that, a pretty dire situation where they risked losing the 1st Panzer and the 6th Infantry armies around Dnepropetrovsk earlier on, where they were surrounded and risked being isolated, but a lucky breakout card allowed them to withdraw, ignoring zone of control restrictions on their movement, and take up a position on the border with Romania. Had they been lost, I think that would have been really catastrophic for the Germans, but luckily those two armies were saved in the nick of time. Further north, the conflict has been slightly less intense, more probing really by the Russians, or the Soviets, I beg your pardon, than anything else. The Germans have been able to take up some pretty strong positions in the woods and on the fringes of the marshes near the Pripyat river and its tributaries. I think that's going to be quite hard work for the Russians if they're going to do a full-on assault in those areas. But once they do, then the open kind of plains of Ostland do open up for them, and a push into Poland and the eastern parts of Germany. But we'll see how that develops over this next turn or two. Over to the west, things have been a great deal quieter. The Allies building up forces in the United Kingdom ahead of an inevitable invasion at some point. And in North Africa, after a slightly kind of slow beginning, finally clearing North Africa of German presence, though they would have liked to have inflicted more damage than they did. The Germans were in fact able to withdraw after the Allied fleet in the Western Mediterranean was interdicted, and allowed the Afrika Korps and the 5th Panzer to get to Italy relatively unscathed. In terms of the war at sea, the Allies have locked down pretty much the North Atlantic. They're going to close that out at some point, see off the German subs. Similarly, the case in the Mediterranean, where the siege of Malta should end up their way before too long, and paving the way for invasions at some point in the next turn or two. Where that will be, we shall have to wait and see. But what I can say is that I am absolutely loving this game. It really is a fantastic cinematic experience in a way. You know, it's not overly complicated. In fact, the rules are really straightforward, I find. And it just gives a beautiful, wide, sweeping view of the conflict. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Really enjoying it.